Not fair. Part 3. Other parts down below. Weeks later. Short post here. I met with my wife today for counseling, mediation, and I'm sorry to report the patient has gone on the table. My wife went through a box of tissue, but I felt the whole thing was strangely cathartic. I left feeling better than I've felt in a long time. I'm sorry for what will happen to our kids, but I feel optimistic about my future. And I honestly tried as hard as I could to salvage our union. The mediator also strongly favored my side for what it's worth, but he did ding me for lecturing too much. When I returned to my clinic, I was teased by one of my older patients because she caught me smiling. She also said my coffee smelled like pancakes. How extraordinarily random. Anyway, her comment was, "You never smile. I thought you had your assistant do that for you." I thought for a moment about that statement before answering. My first thought was how sad if that's true. My second thought was, I bet I'll be smiling more now. I honestly feel as though I've had an infected tooth removed. Yes, it hurt, but I'm feeling a lot better now that it's through. My mind today was as clear and calm as it has been in months. I think I finally have found some of the peace I'd been looking for. I met with a close friend of mine who is a bishop last night. I hadn't even set out to meet him, but there he was in my path as I was on my way to the bank. We spoke for about an hour. He was saddened to hear the news but understood my position. He encouraged me to actively return to church and encouraged me to continue to pray on my decision. He quoted Corinthians, and I retorted with Proverbs. He shared a lot of his general experiences with me that he had encountered over his years. And then he posed the largest question of the night. What will you do when she decides to return to you? I hadn't given any thought to my prodigal wife returning, but at some point, he certainly assured me she would. My thought was that she had her ACL put back together about 3 months ago. So I'll run like hell. I've always been a lot faster than her. So now she'll never catch me. No way. I know how. When I got home, my wife was upset that my spirits seemed high. She lamented that I had lectured her at the meeting. I took her complaint in stride, informing her I had told her not what she wanted to hear, but what she needed to hear. In truth, I did. What I said was accurate, thought out, and fair. She mostly rambled. She was pissed I had the audacity to want to sleep in my bed last night. I assured her I felt quite safe, and that I didn't think she'd try to touch me in my sleep. I told her we need to work on trust, and this would be as good a venue as any to begin. She wasn't satisfied with my answer and told me to go sleep in my office. I told her I don't have a sleep number office, but if she wanted to, she could go ahead. I promised I'd try my best not to wake her in the morning when I got ready to go to the gym at 4 a.m. I also asked her to set aside a couple hours on Saturday so we could begin the process of putting our assets and debts together for mediation. This further pissed her off. I calmly referred to her as honey, which further pissed her off. And I told her gently the time for fighting has passed. It really has. I am not the shrewdest of negotiators, but I can tell when I appear to be holding most of the cards. This woman really doesn't want a divorce. She's obviously upset, too proud to ask for forgiveness, and apparently very, very angry at where her life is headed. I may be a bastard, but the darker side of me enjoyed this a bit. I am a big believer in harmony. I love nothing more than the soft taste of peace. I loathe conflict and strife. I crave order, and sadly she's developed an appetite for chaos. She really doesn't seem to want a divorce. The problem is at this point I do. I explained to her carefully the strong disadvantage to lawyering up, that it just means less for either of us. Less for the kids, and more for those thirsty legal animals. The earnestness of my argument won her over, and she said she'd go for mediation. Well, once I explained what mediation was, she said she'd be in favor of it. Phew. She says she feels I will treat her fairly. She felt strongly that I wouldn't try to hide money or deceive her. I was a little surprised by this admission, not because it's inaccurate, but because it was accurate. That hasn't been her style of late. She then went on to say some silly things like, 1. She wanted me to continue to attend Christmas and Thanksgiving dinners at her mom's. I can hardly wait until you start to see someone again, or I do. They will be just tickled pink to spend the holidays with my ex. That bird ain't going to fly. 2. She couldn't possibly go back to work because the children will especially need a parent now. Just a thought, we just pissed one parent away. So apparently they aren't all that important. Isn't this just a work dodge? 3. We can't tell anyone we're getting divorced when our house goes on the market, only separated. Well, it starts with separation, but it accumulates in divorce. 4. We could arrange to take a family vacation together, but we're not a family anymore. I could continue to on, but this woman plainly is not grasping the concept of marital dissolution. My bishop friend was right. She does want to come back. I can hear my little kitty scratching at the door. She agreed to no dating during the process, and strict posting as to where the other is during our separation. If I was a tree, I think I would have just been marked. I am bright enough to realize that this is her way of telling me I'm clean now. No cheating going on over here. She was supposed to go to a Christmas party last night, but she stayed home. It was the wrong night. Dang, I hate day planner malfunctions. Her problem is, I'm sad to say, is that she never really got good at lying but indulges herself with it just the same. She is moving hard towards me. No complaints with bed last night. Come home a little later if you need to. Don't tell the kids anything. Hell, even this morning I left a lot early than I needed to. Practice doesn't begin for 3 hours yet. I just didn't want to be around her, but she said bye as I went out the door. She was lamenting about our youngest not listening to her. I chuckled and said, he listens to me just fine. But don't worry, it gets worse. I need to talk to my bank today and see what happens when you are upside down on your house. I told my wife I refused a short sale or a walk away. It's our debt, we must honor it. Sometimes it sucks being decent. Horrible holiday. I felt it was a setback on every front. If possible, I feel even farther away from my wife than I did before. At this point, I am contemplating moving up our timetable for divorce. I need her to contribute, and she just won't step up. She is still talking about me needing to leave the clinic as a condition of our staying together. I'm sorry, but I see this as nothing more than a feeble attempt to free up assets for a more lucrative divorce settlement. Isn't trust a beautiful thing? The sad thing was that not too long ago I would have done this for her had she asked. Affairs cloud everything. I miss the way my life used to be. My name is on 2 leases. If either clinic fails, I'm messed financially. I can't make more money anywhere else, and money is her big hot button issue. Her request just isn't well thought out. It's purely emotional. To be honest, I would love to walk away from either clinic or her. I feel in both my business and in my personal relationships I have given away far more than I receive in return. I am not satisfied with either of my relationships. As for my wife, I've largely started to check out from the relationship. I've stopped doing much of anything at home. Nothing makes the bee happy. She is no nicer to me if I do a lot or a little. So I guess she has taught me learned helplessness. Way to improve your lot, dear. I can honestly say that at this point in my marriage, if I can't fix it, damn the torpedoes and full speed ahead. I'm going to break it as fast as I can. I hate the apathy, I hate the indifference, and above all I hate going through the motions and pretending like nothing's changed when it damn well has. It was in the latter's spirit that I blew off her mom's formal Christmas dinner last night. Nothing personal against her mom. She has always been great to me. I just couldn't fathom spending another evening with my wife. So, I went to the ducking movies. I hate going to the movies by myself, but given the circumstances, I figured it would at least get me out of the house. I felt this was important, because 1, it's ducking sad to be alone on Christmas. 2, it gave me a legitimate reason to turn off my cell phone. 3, it gave my wife a look into her Christmas future as we have likely spent our last holiday together. In closing, I have no actual hatred towards the woman. I'm just tired of a marriage that brings me no fulfillment or satisfaction, and yet consumes an inordinate amount of my energy. If my marriage was a dog, I'd put it to sleep. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't shed a tear or two on the way home from the vet. Apparently, not everything can be fixed, and there comes a time when it's just more humane to end the suffering. I am honestly a lot happier without my wife. This has been my greatest surprise. I am not dating, nor will I until I am released from the marriage, but she doesn't share my sense of honor. That is fine though. I do what I do because it protects me. In time she will learn this lesson too. I just suspect that it will just be a little more painful for her to acquire this wisdom than it was for me. This is fine as well, provided she eventually learns. I really can't help her much now. She will have to swim back to shore by herself. I am trying to operate in good faith, which is difficult given her treatment of me thus far. However, a little suffering and a court hearing is a small price to pay if it helps me guide my kids along a better path. We are pretty much polar opposites of each other. When we met, I was in the military and she was a free spirit in college. I am even more hardened than I was then, and she is even more permissive than she was then. It is like we have returned to our base states plus 50. Yet another thing I don't understand about life. Anyway, I will tread lightly for the moment with the intention of inserting my son into a training with me sometime this summer after his older brother leaves for the army. I really think it's best that I boil this frog slowly. I just can't find it in me to stay in contact with my soon-to-be ex-wife's family. I have always enjoyed a good relationship with her mother. But things started to change after my father-in-law died about 5 years ago. He was a fine man and I loved him as my father. In the last 2 years or so it's gotten worse. Her mom is meeting a functional alcoholic and things are just ducking crazy. He moved in about a year ago and is enjoying the good life. What pisses me off is my ex's lawyer has told me that this ducking drunk actually is paying a large part of his retainer. What the duck is that? I feel as though I'm being iced as I am potentially the one ducking sane adult in this whole situation. If I didn't have any kids with my wife, I wouldn't care at all, and I'd simply move on with my life. Unfortunately, though we have 6, and I remain tethered to her train wreck of a family. Any thoughts on how to escape the rubble? I feel I am gaining strength being separated from my wife. I have found a peace I have not known in some time, and I am generally feeling optimistic about my future. The exact opposite can be said for her. She looks haggard, tired, and seems confused during our brief conversations. In court she simply cried. However, the courts have awarded her primary custody of our 6 kids as she is a stay-at-home mom. And I only get to see them every other week. It seems having a uterus in Ka is the primary criterion for determining where children go. I do not have a place big enough to keep 6 kids, and my soon-to-be ex won't swap places for the weekend. Even today she wouldn't let me take them to church. They just stayed home and did nothing, while she went to the gym to play racquetball. Thus far my 17, 15, 13, and 11-year-old have said that they want to live with me. That only leaves the 7 and 5-year-old to decide for. My soon-to-be ex and I had talked about keeping all of our kids together for their well-being. So by her own admission that would give me all 6. However, when she said that she was under the illusion she would get the kids, I have spoken to my partners at work and they have said I could adjust my schedule to accommodate my new parental role. The house has been chaotic in my absence, and she is frequently gone, abdicating her motherly duties to one of our teenagers. This simply is unfair, unsafe, and unacceptable. I could go on further and say the material condition of our home has decayed as well. Like it's a ducking mess. My soon-to-be ex is obviously depressed and has been for some time. I worry about her and I would like to see that she gets the proper treatment, but I no longer have any power in her life. I have basically placed the situation in God's hands, but I know that there must be something proactive I can do to help change this situation. I have already leaked my intentions to 2 of her closer friends, as I don't want her to be surprised by my actions. My problem is I know she is going to break and soon, but I fear my heart is too hard to take her back. I just don't believe I can love her like a husband needs to love his wife after all she has done. My soon-to-be ex has fabricated tales of long-term marital abuse. In court, the best she could come up with to substantiate her claim was that I am gone a lot and sarcastic. Unfortunately, both are true, but in my opinion fall well below the mark of abuse. However, my soon-to-be ex continually cried and acted in an erratic manner that the judge deemed as evidence of chronic emotional abuse. Oh, I don't know, Judge. I won't pretend to be a lawyer if you don't pretend to be a doctor. How about this? Might the court consider the possibility she's nuts? I guess not. To make matter worse, I wasn't particularly well behaved in court. I seem to remember a moment where I stated the need for legal reform before healthcare reform. I believe the word I used was abomination. The judge was plain in telling me that had I behaved better she would have dropped the RO. As my wife's claim were minor by court standards, it appears in court only the judge can have hubris. Duck that. The system is broken. The courts are evil. I disagree with the statement about the cheater leaving. Oh my God. In Ka at least, adultery doesn't matter. Here they call it irreconcilable differences. Why, I don't have a lawyer. I will be blatantly honest. I am a lying sack of crap. I do want to reconcile. I do want my family back. I have an extension from her lawyer. So I still have another 2 weeks to wait for, before I am forced to defensively file. I know her actions, and she's hurt. It doesn't matter to her that most of her wounds are self-inflicted. I have played the nonchalant tough guy role to the hilt. I have recently added being gracious to my list of insults, and it is ducking drives her nuts. She is starting to regret her decision, but she doesn't know how to come back without losing face. To make matters worse, I have fairly effectively sold the notion that I am fine with moving on. It is definitely obvious to her at this point that I have far more options than she does. To better illustrate this point, one of her single racquetball friends has begun to regularly Facebook me. She has invited me out for coffee and expressed an interest in being there for me during this emotionally tough time. I have politely declined all offers thus far. I know she periodically checks my email, so I have left it in the ether to torment her as it were. My wife has begun to earnestly clean the house, which is a first in a long time. She has also started to cook again. She also called me honey tonight when I dropped off my son. Furthermore, she has begun to regularly violate her own row with frequent, almost daily direct phone calls, and even invited me into the garage tonight to go through some of my stuff. So that is why I don't have a lawyer, because I really can't fathom a divorce. Maybe it's ducking biochemical, maybe it's my religious doctrinal hang-ups, maybe it's love. I don't know. She is the only woman I have ever been with, and for whatever reason I still feel as if I'm part of her. So, there you have it. I'm a sentimental doormat, right? That's okay. Pride heals faster than soul does. She even tossed the shadow box she had compiled for me several years ago of my father. It had photos of him as a child through adult, diplomas, and the brochure from his funeral. It was all that I had that belonged to my dad. Who does that to somebody? She told me that she couldn't think in my office. I told her I would never ever do that to her no matter what. She threw away most of my past. It's evil. This afternoon she said she wants my 17-year-old to come and live with me. This is the court order who wouldn't even let me take them to church on Sunday because it was her weekend. So they sat home and did nothing. Like I said, I do want the kids. She is unstable, but I also worry about her. If I can only choose one, I'll settle for saving my kids, but it would be nice to rescue them both. Well, I have until next week to defensively file, but it looks like the clock is going to strike midnight on this marriage, because of my strong and enduring faith in humanity. I had given her one final chance to reconsider. Sadly, her answer was both irrational and untrue. At least she is consistent. I had dropped off a check with my 15-year-old this afternoon because she was out shopping. He was having his piano or saxophone lesson or some such. It was hard to tell because I was outside of the house. Anyway, for the sake of convenience, I gave him a check to give to her. About 2 hours later, I returned from a meeting with my oldest son's recruiter. She was in our driveway when I dropped my son off. So I gently inquired if she'd gotten her check. She said no, and then started going nuts because I had given it to my 15-year-old without first placing it in an envelope. BFD, my checkbook doesn't come with envelopes. To make matters worse, she told my oldest son he should go live with me today. That's the second kid she has kicked out of her house in the last 2 weeks. I told her to strongly rethink her path because if she wants to part out the kids. I already have verbals from our 17, 15, 13, and 11-year-old puppies. That leaves her with only the 7 and 5-year-old. I then told her to go and find a job because she'll be paying me child support soon enough. She then started going off about my Jack Russell. While I enjoy a tangent as much as the next person, I failed to connect the dots between the topics. I feel better knowing I have at least tried. I have honestly exhausted all of my options, so I think it's best just to move on. Sometimes your best just isn't good enough. I can live with that. I hope she can. I hate to take my 17-year-old away from the rest. He'll be gone soon enough in the army, so I don't want to deprive him of his last few months with his brothers and sisters. Selfishly, it would be the easiest thing in the world to do, but for his benefit I can't. He also is a great buffer to have in the house, as in essence he has most of my beliefs and a lot of my mannerisms. I am also sadly sure that this is also one of the reasons his mom would like to see him go. Today, I am sitting at my desk in my clinic preparing to defensively file. Wednesday is my absolute deadline. It is a surreal experience. The only thing I can actually liken it to is putting your dog down. You've known it's been sick for a while, but you've kept putting it off because you still love the thing. In the end though, it really is best for the animal. I've told her I'd accept another extension if she'd like, but apparently that's not on her agenda. I've done all I can. I don't feel the hurt I used to feel. I just know this wasn't the best way to handle this. Every problem she has will now be worse, but in the end, you cannot save people from themselves. Sometimes you can only save yourself. A month later, I have pretty much accepted the fact of my pending divorce. The difficulty I have having now is with the residual hostility on my wife's behalf. If it's not trying to take my dog to the SPCA, it's throwing out the stuff in my office. Or getting rid of my fish is the front fountain. Yes, getting rid of is an euphemism for killing. Currently, her thing is continually attempting to change my plans for my custody weekend with our kids. She balks at letting me take them to church, which has been the norm for them. And she is generally just difficult and combative. For the love of God, she won't even say or write my name. What is that about? I have apologized for my transgressions, and have tried to set a new tone, but she really isn't buying any of that. I have never cheated on her. I have never abused her. In her words, I was gone too much. It's pretty much just the nature of my job, and while I did neglect her, she was far from a loving wife to me. Regardless, our relationship has died, and while I regret that, I think we've both established it's time to move on. So let's move on. She was even the one that filed. Her behavior has complicated things tremendously with our kids. I know she's not entirely well mentally, but I can't really do anything other than lovingly suggest she seeks care. I really don't want to be at war with this woman anymore. It just doesn't accomplish anything positive, and truth be told, it's draining. What have I missed? I'm not looking for ploys, but what have you folks done to promote a more amicable post-divorce relationship? I feel like I'm stuck in the 8th grade, and I'd like to graduate from junior high sometime soon. It amazes me the venom my STBX continues to have for me. I won't labor you with the sad details of my marital demise, but at some point, can I expect that she will begin to move on and start to get over it? I have never cheated on her. I can make a good case for infidelity on her part. Up until the last 6 months of our marriage, I generally treated her well. I didn't even initiate the divorce, although in all honesty I am happy she did. Anyway, she has gone to war with me over every little detail during the early part of our divorce process. She has found out the grass isn't greener, and that all of her original problems are still there. She has alienated our kids, and generally screwed up her life. Yesterday her new friend was over trying to help her fix a commode in the office bathroom. Anyway, neither of them could move it, so my 17-year-old son stepped in and moved it for them. He then quipped that it's tough not having a real man around the house, isn't it, Mom? This touched off a firestorm of near epic proportion. Anyway, what have you folks done that helped calm the waters with your spouse during the turbulent time of a divorce? At this point I will not even consider reconciling. Right now, my kids need a stable, non-distracted parent, and it looks like I am the only person eligible to apply for the job. It's not my needs aren't important, it's that they aren't as important as my kids. She went public with her affair this week. I am having a tough time coming to grips with her betrayal and depravity. In my mind, I am still married, so I will behave that way until my divorce is final. I initially had played with flirting when I separated from my wife in March, but after getting strong nibbles and a direct proposition, I put that toy back in the box. I am just not a casual person with bonding. I would actually have to care about my partner. I know, I guess I'm just funny that way. Today I served my wife with an ex parte summons to appear for a child custody hearing regarding the welfare and safety of our 6 children. I cannot believe the person that she has become. I am soon to become a single father of 6. She now lies as easily as she breathes and hates as readily as she walks. She has alienated herself from our 4 oldest kids and traded her family away for trash. She left her kids and her husband for an unemployed man who is 20 years her senior. He is not wealthy. He is not attractive. He is not intelligent. He is not decent or moral. He simply supports her. If only he'd be as supportive of his last 2 families. I have never felt a greater sadness in my entire life. The only thing constant now in my kids' life is change and commotion. How people could ever do this to their own family is beyond me. Even my lawyer was shocked and saddened as I told her my story. I just wish this nightmare would end. I still love my wife, and it saddens me that she has come to this. I could have handled divorce, but her adultery is almost more than I can bear. Why do people do this? Why do they destroy themselves? It can't be lust. The guy is a ducking troll and only 4 years younger than her mom. It's sick and depraved. I knew she wasn't mentally well, but I can't even begin to wrap myself around this. I thought I could work my way through this, but after crying for 30 minutes straight tonight, I realize that I'm going to need some outside help. I am a good-looking man. I am a great father. I make a decent living. We had a nice house and good kids. Now all of that is gone. And for what? Screwing some grandpa. Really? So far, he has had the common sense to avoid me. I now understand why my wife threw away everything in my office. Given my history and hobbies, I'm sure he wasn't comfortable there at all. I pray to God that our paths never cross. To prevent this event from happening, I readily announce my comings and goings. Does the pain ever go away? I thought I was tough. My lawyer is advising that I go after alimony as well. I just don't know anymore. She really isn't mentally well, so maybe I'll just get her a small apartment. I can't. One of her is my wife anymore, but I can't throw away my children's mother without first giving her a chance to get well. Can I? It's a 20-hour day, after a 20-hour day, after 20 day. I think I need to take a couple days off and just drive to the beach and think. My office manager canceled out most of my afternoon. I was effective through 1 or so, and it was like I just needed to go in the atrium and sit. My partners have really been carrying my practice. I'm lucky to have such good friends in my life. I feel like such a liability to them right now. It's everything I can do right now to put on a good front for my kids. I can now see why some cultures used to stone people for adultery. The pain caused is immeasurable. I feel like I'm ready to tap. Here's hoping tomorrow is a better day, and if not, maybe at least the one after that. She told my kids yesterday that she's going to break it off and focus on them for a while. The timing is a tad odd, but I hope she is sincere. I had suggested this to her in an earlier email this week as it truly is good advice. But nothing resonated with her at the time. I guess my attorney may have been more persuasive when he served her a summons for a custody hearing. I guess sometimes a whisper works, and sometimes you just have to shout. Oh well, so long as they hear. I am at the start of potentially the world's ugliest divorce. What amazes me more than anything is just how brazen my wife has become with her affair. She emailed me yesterday to say she never asks, that she wanted to take my 5- and 7-year-old to a water park this Saturday. She said that they'd be gone from 7 in the morning to about 10 at night. Her thing was that she'd be happy to drop them off when they got back. What good are they to me at 10 p.m., as she won't even let me take them to church on her weekends? I said absolutely no to her quasi-request. To top matters off, this is frigging Father's Day weekend to boot. What's she thinking? I would ask you if she's gone mad, but sadly that would be a rhetorical question. It's like my wife is reading an ebook on how to completely piss someone off during a divorce. I will continue to honor my marriage vows, but I tell you I'm honestly looking forward to the ink drying on my divorce papers. Furthermore, when I finally do pair up again, it won't be with a fat, 60-year-old unemployed oil worker. Have some pride, woman. Well, I found my new house yesterday. It looks a lot like a stripped-down version of our last one. In some ways it's a little better than our last house. In other ways it's a little worse. I guess that's just life. The cops came to my old house again last night. That's twice in the last 3 weeks. My neighbors must love us. My 2 older sons spotted my STBX's grandpa friend crawling around the backyard after midnight. They were unsure who it was at first, so they gave chase. Dummy ran out of our backyard and up the street to his house. Anyway, Genius calls about 5 minutes later because he's concerned. I'd be concerned too if I'd just been busted, looking around in someone's backyard. Anyway, he decides it's a good idea to come over barefooted after midnight to install a new lock on the front door. When he gets there, my son asked him why he changed out of his nice white reflective shoes. No answer. My STBX had a girlfriend staying with her said night, so of course she was completely weirded out by this whole affair. Who lives like this? What's really gross is that the way my kids tell it, their mom really wasn't aware this guy was in her backyard outside of her window at all. Even the cop that came out to interview everyone this morning said that Joe is creepy. This guy is creepy. I don't like what my gut tells me, and I read people well. It's about 2 weeks to my custody hearing, so I don't even dare talk to Joe about this. It's absolutely the wrong time in this process for an incident to occur. I'll bide my time, and I've told my older boys to be extra vigilant. My soon-to-be 18-year-old promised me he'd dispatch him the next time he caught him creeping around the backyard. I had to wave him off and remind him in the eyes of the laws he's an adult now and needs to behave accordingly. I used to love my life. It was so simple. Everything made sense. What happened? Oh well, in less than 2 weeks my children will at least be safe. I can live with that. She had the audacity to complain that I'd canceled her gym membership this morning when I stopped by to pick up my son. I simply explained to her that it was a family membership, and that sadly she is no longer part of my family. Boy oh boy was she pissed. I honestly don't understand her entitlement mentality. Choices and consequences. A week later, well, the meltdown continues. She called the police on my 17, 15, and 13-year-old Tuesday and had them forcibly removed from their home. There is crime. Objecting to her insanity, she then had the audacity to taunt them with "I love you" and "bye" as they were taken away to be delivered into my custody. Who does this? I now have custody of half of my children, and I'm looking to pick up the other 3 when we have our official custody hearing in a week and a half. My attorney says that she's ducked, and that primary custody for me is essentially a lock. At this point, I will no longer list the things, crimes, atrocities my ex-wife has committed in the name of protecting her relationship with her 60-year-old lover. I actually had a colleague suggest court an appointed medical screening to rule out the possibility of a brain tumor. He said he'd had a similar case year back. Go figure, he is a urologist. I guess given the complete, absolute, and utter change in her personality, the differential DX has to be either that or demonic possession. Who knows? She has become a very dangerous and unstable person, and I intend to keep her away from my kids as much as humanly possible. She has gotten to the point where she is actually working against the fabric of her own family. At first, I felt pity and wanted to help. Then I was sad because of how far she had fallen. Now I just want her to put down. I don't hate her or wish her ill. There is absolutely no need for that as she creates it herself. I am just wary, in the same way I'd be with a mad dog. How can you get your STBX to realize that you don't want to fight anymore? I am trying to get her to understand that at this point, I only want my kids and to get on with the rest of my life. Somehow or another, this only seems to enrage her. Go figure, after all this she still desperately craves my attention, good or bad. She is the one who filed. She is the one who is dating. And yet she is the one who is pissed that all I want is my kids. I'm no longer interested in her, and I know she senses this. It helps me tremendously that her new guy is a complete joke physically, mentally, and socially. It seems her market value has dropped substantially in the last 22 years. Mine, however, has gone up. I still have feelings for her, but they die a little more each day. And I would never in 1,000 lifetimes let her back into my life. I am just tired of the constant conflict. I am trying to do what is right for my kids, and they appear happier than they have been in a long time. Months later, well, on the positive front, I was indeed awarded primary custody of all 6 of my children in court. Her visits with the kids have been limited to Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. every other weekend. No sleepovers. I was also given back possession of the family residence and her vehicle, as it is the only one of sufficient size to cart about all 7 of us. She has until the 1st of September to vacate the property. I feel this is ducking ridiculous, as when I was served the sheriff simply told me not to go home. Somehow, 3 weeks seems strangely generous for one person to move. I was told to pay her legal costs, and she will receive approximately $2,000 a month in spousal support. No problem. On a quasi-comical note, she tried to have me mandated by the court to attend her counseling sessions to deal with her esteem issues. The judge quashed this. Needless to say, she has not taken any of this well. I simply cannot fathom why someone is surprised that their spouse had the audacity to challenge them for the house and kids, after they themselves desired to terminate the marriage in both act and misdeed. Also, I cannot and will not take another day of screaming, ranting, or veiled threats towards myself or my children. The legal hounds have been called in today, and Missy, you've been served. I give her a day before she completely violates her TRO. I am seriously considering carrying at this point, but alas, she drew first blood, and I am still prohibited from carrying a weapon. I just can't get a story out of my head, a story that she used to tease me with about her local doctor when she was growing up. How he was shot to death by his wife because he cheated, and that I should learn from that and behave. Well, I've never cheated, but that admission won't likely get me much. My own attorney commented following court on how much she hates me. Nice. My attorney had offered to have the row bounced, but I felt it actually protected me from her. However, she doesn't see it as limiting her towards approaching me. If only my instructors had taught me some of that matrix stuff. Spoke with my attorney about getting a motion in place to leave the state. My attorney has advised against it. My partners have advised against it. Maybe I'm just feeling a tad self-destructive. I don't know. I am just tired of all the courts and fighting. I guess I mistakenly think I can go home, even though I know home doesn't exist anymore. I'm from the Midwest, and I have been on the West Coast for well over 20 years. I have never really cared for it, but I stayed because her family was here. Now, I'm just feeling a need for some distance. I just have no social support here. All I've ever did was work, church, and fight. Now that I have custody of my kids, I no longer train, and as I've been out of the game for over a year, my calls and contacts from my friends and instructors have become less and less over the months. I just never have time anymore. I'm lonely, plain and simple. I feel cut off and isolated. My office manager said last week that I'm a tremendous catch, until I opened my mouth. I had her walk me through that and she said, I'm too caught up in the details of this divorce to distance myself and move on. I explained to her that I can't date, because I'm still married. She just said, you need to. I hear what she's saying, and I'm torn up inside over it because receptive women are everywhere. I just honestly feel I shouldn't. Her advice was to let myself be corrupted a little bit. I've just seen too many men in my position train wreck their lives on that road. I would date a professional peer, but with 6 kids I'm not going to be able to land that despite my looks. That leaves just someone who isn't an equal. Been there, did that, and it was disastrous. Or a duck buddy. The other dilemma I am having is this. When I was first separated and given a kick-out order, I had more money and time than I have ever had in my life. However, my kids were miserable. Now that I have custody, I have neither money nor time. I have no life. She's at the coast with her friends this weekend. She was there last weekend, and probably will be again next. All I do is work and write checks. I do want my kids as they are thriving under my care. But I also need some support. I haven't had a weekend off in over 10 months. I don't think I'm selfish, just human. Her whole endgame is simply attrition. She failed at custody in under 3 months, and that was with my support. I know what I'd be sentencing my kids to, so I press on. The problem is she does have a very poor relationship with our kids. By definition, that is alienation. The only thing left to ascertain is cause. She also has a very poor relationship with me. I still enjoy a good relationship with all of our kids as I have never checked out as a parent. The piece of the puzzle that she won't consider because it is too ugly to look at is that the problem is with her. As a single parent, I would love to have her step up and take some of the load off me. However, she is unwilling to do that. It is nothing more than a money grab. I just hope the courts see through it. The original evaluator noticed this dynamic as well but stated that she was to blame for her acrimonious relationship with our kids. Ironically, my life becomes a lot easier if I were to lose custody. It is cheaper for me to give them to her. Unfortunately, money has never been one of my motivators. I am stuck with antiquated notion of right and wrong, and best interest of the kids. I have told her that the day she can demonstrate she has become a better parent than I is the day I will happily relinquish custody. What makes matters worse for me is the fact she only wants our younger kids. What parent splits up siblings? Comment. That was the final ending to this story. I think this might be the ugliest divorce of all time. No one won anything. The kids end up with both parents separated. All the money goes into the court system, and there's nothing left. I think OP just needs to let the kids go. The wife has family money to help her. Yes, he might only see the kids once or twice a week, but this might be better in the long run. What would you have done to survive? Comment down below, and I see you in the second story that's coming out today.